And our call to worship is we give honor to God, our creator, our redeemer, and our provider. We love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength. And we love our neighbors as ourselves as we give honor to our founder, Mildred Miller, to His Holiness the Blessed Memory, Master Marvin Davis, to our boards at large, our mother's board, father's board, to the officers and leaders of all countries, all cities, all nations as they go through with so many interesting problems that they have to face and finding solutions to the problems we have in this world. We honor them and wish them strength. And we give honor to all of the medical people that are working to help to make our lives better. We greet you all with Hotep, peace abide, shalom. So now we'll have our scripture, which is the 104th Psalm. Everybody seems to be muted, so I'll read it. I know it's a long psalm, but I think it says so many beautiful things in the psalm that I hope you will listen in. So here begin at the 104th Psalm. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty. Who clothes thyself with light as with a garment, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain, who layeth the beams of his chamber in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire.
Daddy, you down again. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now you're back.
Okay. At thy rebuke they fled. At the voice of thy thunder they hastened away. They go out by the mountains. They go down by the valleys unto the place where thou hast founded for them. Thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over, that they should not again to cover the earth. He sendeth the spring into the valleys, which run along the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild asses quench their thirst. By them shall the fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. He watereth the hills from his chambers. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of thy works. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man. Then he may bring forth food out of the earth, and wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face to shine, and bread which strengthens man's heart. The trees of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon, which he has planted, where the birds make their nest, as for the stork. The fir tree are her house. The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, and the rocks for the conies. He appointeth the moon for seasons. The sun knoweth his going down. Thou makest dark, and it is night, wherein all the beasts of the forest do creep forth. The young lions roar after their prey, and seek thy meat for God, from God. The sun arises, they gather themselves together and lay them down in their dens. Man goeth forth unto his work, and in his labor until the evening. O Lord, how manifold are thy works! In wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches. So is this great and wide sea, wherein are things creeping innumerable, both small and great beasts. They go to the ships. There is there Leviathan, whom thou hast made to plague therein. These wait upon thee, that thou mayest give them their meat in due season, that thou givest them their gather. Thou openest thine hand, they are filled with good. The highest they face, they are touched. Thou takest away their breath, they die and return to the dust. Thou sendest forth thy spirit, thou art created, and thou renewest the face of the earth. The glory of the Lord shall endure forever. The Lord shall rejoice in his works. He looketh on the earth, and it trembles. He touches the hills, and they smoke. I will sing unto the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praise to my God while I have my being. My meditation of him shall be sweet. I will be glad in the Lord. Let the sinners be consumed out of the earth, and let the wicked be no more. Bless thou the Lord, O my God, soul. Praise ye the Lord. I've read 104th Psalm, in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Blessed Mother. Amen, amen, amen. And now we'll have the Lord's Prayer, which we can say in unison. Uh, the rest of you are muted, so you won't be hearing it as you say it, but please repeat with me. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen, amen, amen. Okay, and next we'll have a meditation. No, I'm sorry, we'll have a song. And our song is We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder. Again, everyone is muted. The words for those who see the screen is there, but we're going to do this a cappella with no background music. So you'll have to listen to my voice. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Soldiers of the cross. Every run goes higher and higher. Every run goes higher and higher. Every run goes higher and higher. Soldiers of the cross. And now we're at our meditation. Our meditations I'm calling the gateway to heaven. So please repeat after me. Oh God, open my heart, mind, and soul to that beautiful gateway to heaven. Let me not refuse the stone of truth that you laid from the foundation. Help me to rise, shine, and give God the glory. Amen, amen, amen. Well, thank you for that opening kind of inspiration there. And now we're into our opening for our lesson. As I said, for those who can see the screen, one of the symbols that we're showing here is a quilting pattern called the Jacob's Ladder. And this quilting pattern is a part of several quilting patterns that are associated with the Underground Railroad. There was a code that goes with that Underground Railroad. Now, some, when they talk about this code, there was a lot of speculation that these symbols were used as some type of signs or signals to be used as on the pathway of the Underground Railroad, and somehow they were some type of maps that were being used, that if you could follow the map and find your way to freedom. But the Underground Railroad was something that was much more catch as catch can than to think that someone could put up some, give you a little list of things to do and you'd be able to get free. It was a very hard journey to be free. It was a very treacherous journey. And there were, I'm sure, many stops and pauses and things that you had to consider along the way. You had to try to make your best of whatever arose during that long journey, because the Underground Railroad, as we know it, actually started probably somewhere around 1830, because around 1830, Canada made a new law that said that if a Black person made it across their borders, that person will become free. That was not always true in Canada. So going north to Canada was not always a possibility until the Canadians made this law that you would be free. Remember, a Canadian was what we call a slave country also. The British were there also. The British had slaves, but they got their independence, and later in about 1830, they decided that they would let people become free who went there. Um, there is a story about where Black people went before there was a pathway to Canada to freedom, and Florida is a part of that story, but I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to take too much of your time as we're talking about these Underground Railroad quilt codes. But we do find that there were some stories and songs and poems that went along with some of the quilting patterns that were used by Black people during that time period. And I always say that these codes, that they call them, were really lessons, things that you would have to teach a child, that you would want them to know in case they ever had to run away. So I think they were prolific, not because they were some type of map, but because they were if you want to call it an encyclopedia or a library of things you needed to consider if and when you had to run away. Because when you look at some of the meanings behind them, all of them are telling you, are teaching you something about this process of running away, of how you get away, and things you'd have to know and consider on this pathway. And I think this is a way to be able to teach the children about the things that they would need to know if they ever had to run away, without the master saying, what are you trying to teach them? You don't teach them about running away. Because remember, at the time that they were teaching these things, runaway was considered to be a sickness. I think it's called drapacopia, that they had actually thought that a Black person had the mindset of run away, actually had some type of sickness, and the cure for this sickness was cruel punishment. So to be able to teach your children about running away would be something that was very much frowned upon, I will say, by society. And so they had to come up a way of how do you teach the children the things that they, or children or adults or whoever, the things that we need to know. In fact, Harriet Tubman, the first time she, in her account of her life, she said the first time she ran away, she got as far, just a little bit off from the plantation she was on, and she got to the big pig pen. And she stayed at that pig pen for 5 days. And she stayed there because that was the only source of food that she knew after she had ran away. And after 5 days of stealing slop from the pig, she said, you know something? I don't know how to run away. I'm going to go back. And when I go back, I'm going to learn everything I can about running away. So the next time I run away, I'll be able to actually make it away from here. So there had to be an idea of how do you teach, how do you learn about these things that you know that's running away. So the quilting patterns actually start teaching you some of those things. For those who see the screen, the top one they have one that's called monkey wrench. It's a quilting pattern called the monkey wrench. And I remember one guy who hated actually calling that type of wrench a monkey wrench. He would always say it's an adjustable wrench, not a monkey wrench, because the story behind that is that many people say the reason that they called it a monkey wrench is because it was Black people who usually used the adjustable wrench. They were one who were the workers, and calling it a monkey was actually talking about it was a Black person's wrench, but it's an adjustable wrench. But what the quilting pattern, and I'm gonna call it the adjustable wrench, but the quilting pattern called the adjustable wrench taught you is that this, when you ran away, it would be a long journey. And along that pathway, you would need to take the tools that that you knew how to use so that you may have to make some money. You may have to do some work along that way. So a certain tool that you know how to use, or even some mental, spiritual tools that you needed to take with you, to make sure you take them with you. Don't leave them behind. Uh, because many would think that you did not own the tool, but you worked with that tool, you knew how to use that tool, and that tool could help you in your escape. So to make sure that you took whatever tools that you knew how to use, try to escape with those tools so you would still be useful. The second one is called wagon wheel. And a lot of people say, oh, this means to load your wagon and prepare to board the wagon to begin the escape. But I think wagon wheel was actually a symbol that says, uh, make sure you have a way to get your wagon loaded quickly if you see that opportunity to run away. Remember, a part of the Underground Railroad extended into the Civil War. And during the Civil War, as the Union troops came near the plantations, many of the Black people left those plantations and went to those Union camps. Now, there were some bad stories about that, those contraband camps. But with that, you can see there are pictures of them actually on wagons going to these Union camps or going away to freedom. So part of learning to run away is have a way prepared that in case that opportunity for you to get away, that you already have the things and that wagon ready to get you to freedom. And the third one of this list we're going to talk about is called bear paws. And it looks like four bear paws in this quilting pattern. And bear paws teaches us that, and when you're on this long journey, you're probably going to be on a mountain trail, you're going to be out of view, you're going to be somewhere that a forest that you've never been in before. And when you're in this forest that you've never been in before, you're going to want food and water. And one of the ways to find food and water in a forest that you've never been in before is to look for the tracks of animals that eat the same things that you do. Now, the bear eats berries and fish and other things that are consumable by humans. The bear also knows where there is water. So you're not tracking down the bear to catch the bear, but you're tracking down the bear because if it's walking through that forest, it is probably going to a food source. And so you can use that pathway to find food when you're in there. So, and that's just to kind of give you an idea that these underground quilting patterns, or what they call codes, were actually teaching tools. And so you could create a quilt with these teaching tools. You can give your children stories and songs and things to go along with that. So in case they ever had to run away, that they had the things that they needed to be able to make it away. So that's the kind of the idea behind the quilting patterns that we see. And one that we're going to talk about today is called Jacob's Ladder. Now, this is an interesting quilting pattern because as we understand the story of Jacob and the ladder, Jacob, whose name was later changed to Israel, was headed away from his father's country because where his father was living then, to go and find success in life. Now, this is after he had actually stolen the blessing of his brother. Remember, Jacob was a twin. We talked about the twins last time at Gemini, but the twins in the Bible are Jacob and Esau. Esau was actually the older of the twins, and he was the one who was supposed to get the family birthright or the blessing from his father. But his Jacob's mother actually liked Jacob better, and the father liked Esau better. So the mother and Jacob devised a plan where they could trick Esau, who didn't have very good eyesight, into blessing Jacob instead of blessing Esau. And after Jacob was blessed, he actually left that land and went on a trip to make his fortunes. And on that trip, he found a place to take a nap or take a sleep or go to sleep before he got there. And he found this rock, and he put this rock down as a pillow, and he laid this rock down on his head, and he fell asleep. When he fell asleep, he had a dream. And when he dreamed that there was a ladders going up to heaven, and angels were going up and coming down from this ladder on their pathway to between God and man. As the intermediaries or the messengers between God and man, he saw this ladder there. And because he had the dream on this rock, he anointed the rock and blessed the rock, and then called the rock Bethel. And in Jewish folklore, this rock is said to be the area where they later would actually build the temple. This was the land where the this was the place where the temple would later be built by Solomon. They even say that that place is actually the place that they say they believe that Adam, and that's that first Adam, is buried somewhere near that place where Jacob had this dream. Now, for the Underground Railroad, and I mentioned that connection between that being the temple because earlier we talked about uh, the the stone that the builders rejected will become the cornerstone. Many of them believe that this rock became the cornerstone of the temple, and it was rejected because the Jews had turned away from this place. When they went over to Egypt, they had actually left the place where God told them he was going to bless them, and they went away to another place, which is Egypt, and were actually kind of like coerced by Moses to leave and go back to the place where they went. So they had rejected this rock. They rejected this holy place. They rejected Bethel to go to be in Egypt, and then had to come back. And so this rock became the cornerstone for the temple in their folklore. So back to the quilting pattern called Jacob's Ladder. For those who see the screen, I do want to mention that on the screen you see a quilting pattern. And this quilting pattern called Jacob's Ladder, and this one is nice enough that if you look sort of like in the center of it, you can very, I think, clearly see with some of those white blocks there that there is a ladder or stairways that is hidden in the pathway. I'm going to try to turn on my annotations so I can use it for those who can see. I turn my pen on to make sure you can see the ladder. But if you look at these steps here, it's not, it's just the pen. Here you see the steps of the ladder in the pattern. So it's kind of like Jacob's ladder. So, or you can see the steps going other way. Your steps here, but they're kind of like in this great pattern, there is this ladder. And what Jacob's ladder meant to the Underground Railroad is that if a mysterious pathway to heaven appeared to you, take that pathway. And they said it, Jacob's ladder is something mysterious because it's like something that you get in a dream. If you have a dream of some mysterious way in heaven, and almost all of the slave codes or slave lessons always represented that place of freedom. So with this ladder, it was showing you that this mysterious pathway no matter which way it went, was a place, something that you should follow to get to freedom. Because freedom was, just because it was mysterious, didn't mean that it wouldn't be worth it getting free. In fact, in some of the stories about freedom, there's a story about um, Boxcar John, I think he's called, and he was a black man who actually had himself nailed into a shipping cart, and so he could be shipped away to the place of freedom. So we're saying these mysterious pathway to freedoms, go ahead and take them. It's kind of like the story behind Jacob's ladder. And just to go for, again, for those who see the screen, when you're looking at it, another beautiful thing about quilting patterns is that they actually are they kind of teach you order. I remember when we were in class under Her Holiness of Blessed Memory, Mildred Miller, one of the things that she would have us to do during these classes is each class was assigned to make a quilt. And the class would have to have a meeting of each month that they would get together and start working on this quilt as part of their graduation exercise. They had to make a quilt. And to make quilts, you make these patterns. You're looking at it. Another beautiful thing about quilting patterns is that they actually are they kind of teach you order. I remember when we were in class under Her Holiness of Blessed Memory, Mildred Miller, one of the things that she would have us to do during these classes is each class was assigned to make a quilt. And the class would have to have a meeting of each month that they would get together and start working on this quilt as part of their graduation exercise. They had to make a quilt. And to make quilts, you make these patterns and then you sew these patterns together. And some of the most beautiful patterns that are made for quilts are made in a fashion that the pattern actually is a circular pattern around a point, and then you sew these patterns together. And some of the most beautiful patterns that are made for quilts are made in a fashion that the pattern actually is a circular pattern around a point. And again, for those you can see, if I got my annotation going again, wrong way, point. And again, for those you can see, if I got my annotation going again, wrong way. See if I get my annotations going again. And the pen tool. When I say a circular pattern, this pattern, that for those where you can see the screen, I'm going to circle the pattern. This is the pattern where you see the numbers. Here are the numbers. See if I get my annotations going again. And the pen tool. When I say a circular pattern, this pattern, that for those where you can see the screen, I'm going to circle the pattern. This is the pattern where you see the numbers. Here are the numbers of the different types of cloth that you would use to make it, the two cloths being of a contrasting color. And when you look at the different types of cloth that you would use to make it, the two cloths being of a contrasting color. And when you look at this pattern going this way, you'll be able to see that the pattern just keeps going around and around and around. And what do I mean by around? If you look at this pattern, going this way, you'll be able to see that the pattern just keeps going around and around and around. And what do I mean by around? If you look at this pattern here, that is the same pattern. And if you look at this pattern here, that here, that is the same pattern. And if you look at this pattern here, that is the same pattern. And you look at the pattern here. What I'm doing is showing them in a counterclockwise way how the pattern repeats itself around this square here. So it's making like a circular pattern around. By getting these, it's the same pattern. And you look at the pattern here. What I'm doing is showing them in a counterclockwise way how the pattern repeats itself around this square here. So it's making like a circular pattern around by getting these pieces. And so the base pattern is basically the base pattern. Now, what was this? Again, pieces. And so the base pattern is basically the base pattern. Now, what was this? Again, the base pattern is what it's showing with these numbers, that it's just made of two types of blocks that are just repeated across the thing. One block being a big square with two triangles of different colors. And the base pattern is what it's showing with these numbers, that it's just made of two types of blocks that are just repeated across the thing. One block being a big square with two triangles of different colors, and one small pattern being a four squares of two different colors that are put together in a checkerboard fashion. So when you look around, you see this one small pattern being a four squares of two different colors that are put together in a checkerboard fashion. So when you look around, you see this this block with the two squares here, 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 and here. It just goes around to make a four around. And the other pattern is shown here, here, here. This block with the two squares here, 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 and here. It just goes around to make a four around. And the other pattern is shown here, 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 and in the center. So if you had a group making these patterns, the people of the group could be assigned to make these individual squares here and in the center. So if you had a group making these patterns, the people of the group could be assigned to make these individual squares and just make the right number of them. You'd be assigned to make a certain number, and then you'd come together a group to actually start sewing the patterns together. So it's a lot about patterns and constructing them in the right way. So it actually helps to your concentration. It helps and just make the right number of them. You'd be assigned to make a certain number, and then you'd come together a group to actually start sewing the patterns together. So it's a lot about patterns and constructing them in the right way. So it actually helps to your concentration. It helps and sewing, even when you're sewing the pieces together, is a exercise in concentration to be able to do these things. But sewing, even when you're sewing the pieces together, is a exercise in concentration to be able to do these things. But that is the beauty of quilt making and the beauty of this pattern called the Jacob's Ladder, this mysterious ladder that if it comes to you, to go to freedom. Now I'm bringing up something like this because this shows that the slaves who were not supposed to be taught, not supposed to be educated, actually find out that they had to find ways to pass education from one generation to the next generation. Because they often use symbols and signs, not being able to read, but there are even other symbols and signs that they say that the blacks, when they were enslaved, used to notify you of certain things. They had a certain symbol they would use to let you know that the person who lived here had some medical skills. But there were other symbols and signs and artwork things that they would use to be able to teach from one generation to the next generation. and I'm sure they had ways to teach about science and well, when I say science, about the things, the skills you would need to be a um, a carpenter or a woodworker. Remember, one of the things we saw was the tools of the adjustable wrench. How do they pass this knowledge down from one generation to the next? And storytelling, artwork, all these things are different ways of teaching because there's more. We think that reading is the only way to learn, but there are other ways to pass through songs, through stories, through other things that you can pass information from one generation to the next. Now, in our story, continuing in our story about Jacob, Jacob mother was Rebecca. And when you look up Rebecca in I think we talked about the strong concordance before, that it just says that it gives it as the wife of Jacob. It doesn't give a direct meaning of the name Rebecca, Ribka, as it is in Hebrew. But it says that this word Rebecca comes from a same word, it had a same root as the word Mabek. And Mabek is a word that means a stall, a place where you hide things. And it, like I said, is doing this constellation of Cancer or Crab that this star that's related to Rebecca comes out, and it's also considered to be the stall. But that stall or that hiding place is one of the things that we even learn about crabs. Like, we always think of crabs of being in this hole, being in this hiding place. Because remember, the crab as a symbol is there to teach us some things about ourselves. So it relates in that name from Rebecca of her being like this a person who was sort of like in a hiding place or like a crab. Now, the word for crab from the word that's used for the sign Cancer that's called the crab in modern Hebrew is this word sartan again. And the word means serrated, which means like a knife with all those little ripples on it. So it's like scissors or something, and talk about the action of the claw. And as we talk about talk about Cancer, we're going to talk more about that claw that the crab has and is being surrogated. And being surrogated so in a way so that it actually becomes even the chewing mechanism for the crab is his claws. They don't have real teeth inside of a crab, but a part of how they get their food to a digestible state is with the claws that they have and being able to claw on things. I think we're now about ready to go to the lesson on the crab, but before I do that, I want to unmute everyone and see if there are any questions or comments. So any comments? So no questions or comments so far. I have everybody muted again. So we're going to go and talk about this lesson on the crab. And with this lesson that I have on the crab, again, these messages were written by me. I think it was either in the 80s or 90s when we had a magazine called Hear Wisdom Calling. And in Hear Wisdom Calling, I used to do a monthly column in that magazine that actually had two lessons. It had one lesson that was about one of the tenets that went with the signs of the zodiac, and then talked a little bit about the name of when I say the name of the sign, but the name of the sign from the symbol that goes with it. Because as I said, in many of the other languages, Cancer, and it's funny because the modern Hebrew word for crab, sartan, is also their name for cancer, the disease. So it goes to both of them, just like so the word cancer can mean either in Hebrew, you could either be talking about a crab or you can be talking about someone that has a cancer in it. It's not really originally a Hebrew word. It's a word that they came from then an Arabic, Arab, what's the word? Arabic name. So with the lesson of the crab, what it says here is the crab is a scavenger. It's a creature that feeds on dead animal flesh and other decaying organic matter. At first glance, that might seem to be not to be a spiritual blessing, but wouldn't the world be full of decay and disease if it were not for scavengers? So it's saying that we have to even think that the crab being a scavenger, and we think of, oh, that is something bad. I remember it was always telling me, oh, the Bible says don't eat scavengers of the sea. But, and I'm not going to say that you should or should not eat them, but I'm saying that when we're thinking of scavengers, are we thinking about them in the right spiritual context? That the scavenger is actually doing a service to mankind by ridding it of decaying material and reprocessing it so that it can be something better. In fact, in the written lessons, it says that in chemistry, a scavenger is considered to be a substance that removes impurities when added to a mixture or that counteracts the undesirable effects of other constituents. So it's saying that in chemistry, a scavenger is like an antidote. It's something that if you want to remove some impurities from some type of mixture, that you use what chemistry calls a scavenger. Uh, and the lesson continues. So, from a spiritual point of view, the crab represents the power to cleanse the world of impurities and undesirable points and undesirable elements. So, scavenger, are there undesirable elements that we have in society? And do we have a way to be able to get rid of those undesirable elements and try to get where things are more pure? This makes you think of what was Rebecca's reason that she believed that Jacob would do better with the blessing than Esau. Now, Esau was a son who didn't care much about managing the household. He was more interested in just going out and hunting. But she see in him that he did not have the right ideas to be able to make the blessing something that could actually help to uplift the family. That she see more in him a more pure way of doing it, and so saying, let's forget about not forget about him, but let us take the blessing and put it where it can do the most good. Was it actually more of an act of, like it says here, the act of purification is a holy doorway to the creative powers of the universe? Was she trying to was she doing this act to actually to get through this heavenly doorway? And with Jacob finding this doorway in this dream, was she correct? Because when you look at the end of the story, you'll find out that Jacob did go off. He did end up making a fortune for the family. He actually came back with that fortune to the family. And when he came back with that fortune from the family and with his with two wives, he actually gave Esau most of the blessings from that. As the story goes, he put all of these caravans of animals, of people, and other things that he had been able to do with the blessing that his father gave him. And he told each one of those caravans, when Esau comes, because he knew that when he was coming back, that Esau knew it and Esau was going to attack him, tell Esau that these are yours. So he was giving Esau all the blessings that he had got from this act of being blessed by his father. He actually gave all that much of that wealth back to Esau. So Esau actually came off a better man. That by the time Esau actually got to Jacob, he had totally forgotten how that he was angry with him, that he was mad at him for taking the blessing, because he even saw that Jacob had done more of the blessing than he would. So to go back to the lesson, it says the word crab comes from the Indo-European root yerub, and that means to scratch, to cut, to carve, to crawl, to draw, or to write. It represents digging into that which exists to sustain or preserve life. So it says that word crab means you have to sometimes dig into things to get at that beautiful part of life, that pure part of life. It takes that digging, it takes that scratching, it takes that effort. Um, as it talks about this, it's going to tell us sometimes about looking at the past and retrospecting in the past and correcting some of the problems of the past. And one of the things that, and this has come up a lot in some of the talks about undoing racism, at the beginning of the class, they'll get together, or beginning of the session, they'll get people together and they'll say, okay, these are some of the ground rules that we're going to work on. And there's certain things about criticize processes, it's not people, things like that. But one of the things they said, to be able to talk about this topic of racism, you have to agree that many of the things you're going to talk about are going to be uncomfortable. You have to agree that you're going to feel uncomfortable with some of the things that are being brought up. And it prepares you beforehand that these discussions are going to be uncomfortable. A lot of times we see news forecasts now, and you see some things that they're going to show you someone being shot or being murdered by putting a knee on them. You'll hear the newscast that people tell you beforehand said, some of the things you're about to show you, they're uncomfortable. They get you ready for that uncomfortable feeling. And in life, some of the things that you look back on life, you have to tell yourself, this is going to be uncomfortable to look at that. But in looking at that uncomfortable thing, you're trying to get rid of those things that are uncomfortable about it so you can get to the things that are pure about it. So part of that process of cleansing yourself of things in the past is to realize that some parts of those things in the past, it's going to be uncomfortable to deal with those things. But you're doing it so that you can preserve life, not to go to that, not just to make yourself uncomfortable. Because the process is not to make yourself uncomfortable, but many times for the sake of comfort, we let things fester. And that is not good, to let things about life fester just because it's going to be uncomfortable for you to actually face those things. Going back to the lesson says, in this way, the past serves as the creator of a beautiful future, much like a father creating a son that will inherit wealth. His Holiness of Blessed Memory, Master Malvin Davis, once told me that a son should be better than his father because he can stand on his father's shoulders. And so that was like teaching children that, we're going to give you some things to actually make you to have a better life than we have, because we give you some of these things to make your life better. And so it's telling you that your parents aren't perfect. There are things that you can improve upon, but you need to sometimes scratch and dig and claw into the things that they did to actually trace the good and find that good in them, but not to preserve those things. And I mentioned not to preserve them. It's because we see our president and many of the others. I know sometimes my daughter doesn't like us to bring up the president and these things, but he's such a
It's
good
fine.
example.
It's okay. It's
Huh?
okay.
It's
I
okay?
said it's okay.
Oh, it's okay. Okay. Because sometimes he's a good example of how not to do things. And you see, it's not just him, but it's the people with him that they're saying that we're trying to destroy their history. We're trying to destroy their culture. And if they were saying that we're trying to destroy our history, I say, are they talking about their history or their rap sheet? For those who don't know, a rap sheet is something you get when you've been going and then processed by the law of some crimes you committed, and they just keep listing these crimes. Are they saying that their rap sheet is their history? That it could, because they're trying to say that we wouldn't have been great if we hadn't been these rapists, if we didn't have exploiting people, if we didn't have lynchings, if we didn't have whipping people unnecessarily and brutally, that these are the things that have, and trying to get us to believe that these are the things that have made America great. So we should somehow accept these things as a part of our history. And I say that is not a part of our history. That's not a part of American history. That's a part of American rap sheet. When you look at some of the things that they did to the Native Americans, even going out and having this festival or whatever they want to call that they did at Mount Rushmore in defiance of the Native Americans who said that this is our land, we're going to keep it as a sacred land. But you say no, but we want to go and give tribute to these people who actually did hateful things to the Native Americans, and we want to make that our backdrop and say this is our history. But I say your history is a rap sheet, and no one should want to say that, oh, I want to keep and preserve my rap sheet. We should try to say how we're going to make it better than saying that it's because of my history of lying, it's because my history of exploiting others, of my history of being brutal to others, my history of rape, my history of lynching. Those are the things that I say that's your rap sheet. And you need to look at your rap sheet and see how you can clean it up. Not seeing how you can put it in front of people's face and say, ah, look, this is my history. I am a rapist. I am a liar. I am a cheat. I am a thief. What kind of history is that you're saying that you want to do, rather than saying that some of those things that they were done, that we need to look at them. It's uncomfortable to talk about them, yes, as this lesson shows us, but part of that uncomfortable feeling that you get is how do we correct it and make it better? And I'm going to pause again to see if there's, again, anyone who has anything to say. So anyone want to make any comments? I'm going to mute everyone to see if I'm missing someone.
Daddy, I think you making a really good point about, like, you know, what people are trying to preserve. I think it's interesting that people are trying to preserve these statues and preserve the flag and all this other type of stuff. But realistically, I don't think what people are realizing is, right, like you said, what they're preserving is being people who stole people from another country, made them work, and then you beat them, you treated them like animals. That's really what you're trying to preserve.
Yeah, it's like trying to preserve a rap sheet. Go ahead,
Yeah, I don't think people look at it that way. They just look at it as, oh, we're trying to preserve this man who was a fighter of the Confederate Army. Yeah, but he was a fighter of the Confederate Army and the Confederate Army was about fighting against slavery. It wasn't about, oh, we want to fight for something else. It was fighting for the right to still keep slaves.
Yeah, and to exploit people. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just don't understand. I think, you know, people in this generation are fighting for that, but I don't think that they realize that that's what they're fighting for. But maybe some of them do and don't care. But I just think that's what I think. I don't think people are really tying the two together. They're just tying it to, oh, he was a general, he was a fighter, he was somebody who fought for our country. But it's like, no, that's not really what he fought for. You know what I mean? The reason why they were fighting is deeper than that.
Yes, and so that's what I say. They're not scratching into it. They're not digging up and finding out what does it actually mean. What were they actually fighting for? Because as I said, they're trying to preserve a rap sheet, not a history. They're trying to preserve the crimes that they committed against humanity, and then not call them crimes, and not call them crimes because say, look how much money we made off of that. Look how, you know, and that's like a person robbing you, and then as he robs all your stuff, comes and saying, but look how I made such a beautiful house of everything, all the stuff that I stole from you. How, you know, what kind of history is that to preserve? You're trying to preserve a history of crimes and then justify those crimes by saying, but look how great that has made us. It wasn't and to me, I still say it was not the crimes of America that made America great. It was the fact that America was fighting for freedom, fighting for liberty and justice. They did not give it to everyone, but the mere fact that they were trying to give justice to more people than the previous systems had done. And when I say the previous systems, when you went into those aristocratic societies, that austerity of only doing for what they consider to be the best, the rich people, and the poor people are being just neglected. Because remember the things that, and I know Teresa has been watching a lot of those movies that show it from Charles Dickens, the way they treated their own people over in Europe was terrible. When you talk about the British, the French, or the Russians, the Germans, all of them, the way they treated their the normal people, the common people, was just as terrible in many ways as slavery. And they took that system and brought it back and started giving themselves that freedom, but still didn't know how to do business well enough. Because I still think that if you had a business and you had totally free labor, and your only way to make the ends meet at the end of the year was to have to sell some of your laborers, then that means to me you weren't doing good business. And you'll find on many of those slave plantations, that's what they were doing. They were going a whole year of working to do things, to have crops, but many of them to be able to around somewhere around Christmas time and the New Year, they would balance their books. And a lot of times to balance their books, they had to sell off many of the people they enslaved to make some money. So here you have had free labor all this time, and your way of making money now is to sell off the producers of that free labor. That to me was not good businessman. When you look at how America ruined uh, field after field because they were planting the same crop over and over again. When you look at how dirty our rivers and how messed up some of our forests are because of some of the practice they did, that was not good business. And these all of these crimes, you're trying to say, oh no, but that was our history. That is what made us great. That was made us rich. But I still say any type of enslavement, what enslavement did in America is what enslavement did everywhere else in the world. It made uh, one group very rich at the expense of the things that they stole from other groups. If we would have actually used freedom as it should have been used, you'll find that everybody could have made it, and still America would have been great. I think it would have been greater because to me, when you get people the incentive to do work, you will get more from them rather when you think that I'm going to oppress a person to make them work. Does someone else want to have?
Yeah, but one of the things that I kind of came to me as an enlightenment was I just watched the Hamilton play on
Mm-hmm,
Plus, and basically, it was all about their revolution and being able to get away from England or whatever. And they were like fighting for their freedom, and they went through a whole war to fight for freedom. But then they turned around and did the same thing that English people were doing to them, to Black people in Africa,
mm-hmm,
and they
mm-hmm.
actually brought them over there. So it's just like it just seemed like it's something that's ingrained in their DNA to oppress people. It's been happening now. Originally, when they were in Europe, Europe were oppressing their own people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they cut away from Europe and came over here, they didn't have anybody to oppress in order to win. So it's basically that's basically the only thing that they know when it comes to winning because of the way the British monarchy and all those things are held. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of really sad that they did the same thing over here with different people.
Yes. And part of it is because of many of the people who were rich, even when you read up on how they came up with the concept of white people, which was not, it's not a very old concept. You can find out when did that rich aristocracy decide they were going to come up with this idea of a thing called white people to try to control the majority of people to allow them to continue imprisoning and oppressing others. You'll find that before that time, you know, when we look at white people now and we see that white middle class and middle class America, we kind of think that middle class America has always been there, but it did not. There was not always a middle class America. Middle class America did not start until they freed Black people. Before then, you had very rich white people, you had Black people who were oppressed, and you had a whole bunch of poor white people. And some of those terrible things you're doing is when they decided that when the rich, very rich, decided that they could use this poor class of white people, and I'm saying poor class, I don't know what I'm saying, but they were didn't have much money and things, that you can entice them to keep the masses of other people oppressed, that they use them. But when they first did that in the days of enslavement, they still basically remain poor white people. When Black people became free is when you see the white middle class develop, when you see them actually started paying them better wages, started giving them more rights and freedoms. We actually, in a way, fought to get low-class white people a leg up in this society. Even in, and when and I'm talking about when they emancipated Black people from slavery back in 1865. It actually, that's when you see the middle class of white people growing in America. When you look back at the Civil Rights Act of 1964, you'll see that other classes of non-white people actually got a leg up in society when they were opening up these freedoms and using them as sort of like a buffer between these very, very rich people and making this middle class. And if they go back to that old system, they need to look and see, how far back do you want to go? Do you really want to go back to that old system where poor whites had sometimes less than the Blacks who were enslaved? When you look at some of those slave narratives and talk about how sometimes the poor whites were actually coming to enslave Black people to get resources because they had so little. Think of it, sometimes the poor whites had less resources than the enslaved Blacks. And the enslaved Blacks would try to help them because at least the enslaved Blacks could find little pockets of land that the owner was not paying attention to, and they could plant their own crop and make something of that crop. And many times the poor whites didn't even have that. And so they were coming to some of the enslaved Blacks to who would share some of the things they had. So they need to really look at what they're trying to go back to. That's why I said they need to dig in the surface and look at the real history. Look at the real history of, you know, they, like you were talking about those generals and stuff they put up. Those generals were a lot of times the landowners, the property owners. And you very seldomly see them where they have a broken arm or broken leg or any cuts on them. Why? Because they were the generals standing in the hut somewhere, sending the poor white people to go out and be shot and murdered. And so they don't have scratches on them. But if you go and look in the Civil War, there were a lot of poor white people who got injured and maimed and shot because they were fighting for that higher class. So we really need to look at the one. I think I hear my wife saying right there. She's on mute, but she said I got a comment, so I'm gonna unmute her.
Yes, I was wanting to say that I saw something on Al Sharpton's show that Frederick Douglass, he brought up this thing that Frederick Douglass said. He did this, I guess it's an article about the meaning of July 4th for the Negro.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of it he brought out was, it says, the rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shaped by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought light and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. I just wanted to bring that out. That was
No, that's so
something that
true.
Frederick Douglass
That's why,
did.
some of you
And
might have been in the early. Go ahead, Teresa.
I said Frederick Douglass did that. It said July 5th, 1852. So I just wanted to bring that out before we got off.
Hmm. Yes, and 1852 would have mean it was before the end of the Civil War. He was questioning, why are we celebrating the freedom of people when you didn't allow the black people in the South or black men all over, you didn't give them the right to vote. You didn't give rights to women to vote. I'd like to keep reminding people that this year, 2020, is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And the 19th Amendment is the amendment that gave women the right to vote. So women, think about it. It was only 100 years ago when you were given the right to vote in the United States with the 19th Amendment. And for black men, we didn't get the right to vote until 1870, which is 150 years ago. Black men were given the right to vote. So I think this right to vote is something that we need to find out, how can we use that? How can we make that something that can make America what it was meant to be? Because when you look at the words of the Constitution, they're talking about what would really be a great America when all men are created and equal and endowed by their creator with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In America, we should be fighting for that. And part of that fight for that is to say, yes, this is going to make us uncomfortable. And this is part of the lesson of the craft. It's going to make us uncomfortable to dig into some of these things. And part of that uncomfort is to try to make it better and not try to live a lifestyle that accepts some of the horrors, some of the crimes against humanity. And to me, they were crimes, even if you pass laws to make them seem like they weren't crimes. And I'm talking about those type of laws that they had a law about spitting on the sidewalk, and laws about spitting on the sidewalk were just certain type of laws that they made to be able to incarcerate black men quicker. There was a law against vagrancy, the vagrancy laws that they used. Remember, a vagrancy law means they will arrest you and put you in jail because you did not have a job. You were not working for someone. And this was after they abolished slavery, but they made vagrancy laws that if you didn't have a job, that a police officer could arrest you, put you in a chain gang, and force you to go and work for someone else. There were all kind of ways that these laws were used to make small crimes out of big punishments. And these are the things that you're saying are part of your history that you're trying to keep. And these are the things that you're saying that this is what made us great, because they believe that these type of things are what made us great, and not the Constitution that talks about liberty and justice for all. For me, it's still the concept of liberty, the concept of justice, the concept that are embedded into that Constitution to give equality and freedom to people. And no, I don't think freedom means that I can walk outside without a mask and then somehow say that that is a part of my freedom. Um, because I'm not, to me, it's not freedom to be irresponsible. Freedom becomes, there's a responsibility that comes with freedom. And part of that responsibility that you get from freedom is the responsibility to help take care of others. So to me, it's a responsibility. You're freer or emancipated, because emancipated means that you're now going to be an adult and be responsible for the things that you do, responsible for yourself and responsible for others. There's a responsibility that comes with emancipation that says that I should do the things to help others. But this is really the time that I said that were there others who had some comments that you'd like to make?
Yes, good morning. Great lesson again, Barbara, and I commend you. You know, and then I just look at they don't want to accept the most valuable situation of all, which is change.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to embrace the change because what they had working for them was the forefathers, but so many of them have left now and passed away and withered away, and now they're trying to use that same Willie Lump Lump symbol that they did before. It feel like they can get into your head and tell you anything, and you just gonna believe it. But see, to me, I see the oppressors now is the white people. You see more white people now in food lines. You see more white people losing their homes and stuff because it's so many black people have mounted up and became rich and have money and can voice their opinion, and that scares them more than all because they see change. And they don't want change come because if new laws come, that means our grandkids and our grandkids and our great grandkids to come going to have better laws. And these old laws that they had, these old things that done withered away, you know what I'm saying? They still want them to come up to the front, but the problem is they can't come up to the front. They're going to have to embrace the main thing, which is change. Even Martin Luther King talked about change. Even the Bible speaks of change. So you can't hold on to the inevitable. And the inevitable is that the thing is now we have, like you said, we have more people giving than they would have ever thought about giving us. You understand? We doing more for them to benefit now than they ever thought about us benefit. And another thing they don't like to see is so many people of their own color is saying, hey, wait a minute. So you can't have a devil standing. They say, hey, I got the freedom. I'm free. I got the freedom to do this. It ain't too many black people. It's the white people say, hey, hold up. You coming into my constitutional rights. So anyway, if you really look at it, they helping us because they speaking, which is the truth. And once we grab hold to it, we don't really have to say too much because they doing all the speaking now saying, hey, so when you leave and look at the president, he's trying to hold on because he's scared. He don't have nothing else to hold on to. You know, he's so scared that all this change gonna come upon his watch, but he put himself in that predicament. He put himself in that place because he wanted to become the president. So he have to be able to welcome the change. And that's just how they did a lot of our forefathers and foremothers. They wouldn't let them welcome the change. But I truly believe the change is here now. You know, we don't got past that bucket of crab syndrome. Oh, you put a lot of them in a bucket and they ain't going to be able to come out because every time one try to come out, you're going to claw them down. Yeah, we know it still exists in the mind thinking. But in reality, when we really sit down and think, we're more than conquerors because we have learned how to pray. We have learned how to really trust and believe that there's a God, there's a way, but you have to dig down deep inside yourself and know that, hey, the only thing going to hold you back is your belief, and you are your biggest nightmare. You are your biggest problem because God have already made the rough road smooth. He already have laid the path. We just have to continue to do what our foremothers and fathers did, which is concentrate and believe in if there's a higher power and a higher source. So I'm definitely enjoying the lessons, and I take my hat off to you once again.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, because we keep saying it's change, but to me, what we're calling change is healing. If you're sick, you want to stay sick. There are some things that you can say it's change, but if you give the land and your body a chance to heal. Remember last time we were talking about cleaning out the wound, and that's the change. That's kind of change we're talking about. Clean out the wound and the wound that you have, and let the healing take place. Because if we actually use life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to its fullest, I think the world becomes more prosperous, not less prosperous. Their idea, oh, if we let some other people come up, that the United States is going to be less prosperous. And I'm saying that's not even what we want. We don't want to live in a nation that is less prosperous. We want to live in a nation that's more prosperous. I mean, when I was working at the Black Archives, and one of the people that they talk about is a man named D.A. Dorsey. D.A. Dorsey was the first Black millionaire in Miami. And D.A. Dorsey, because he was a businessman and a good businessman, when during the days of segregation, they made a totally separate uh, commission, or what they call it, like school board. They made a school board, a board of trustees that was just for the Black schools, to try to help to improve the Black schools. They felt that they weren't getting enough from the whatever you call it, school board members. So they made a board of trustees for the Black schools to try to get them to become better. And businessmen like D.A. Dorsey was on that board. And one of the things that the quote that they have about D.A. Dorsey is he said that America is actually wasting one of its greatest natural resources. And he said, and that natural resources are the young Black boys and girls. So when they have this process of oppressing us, they're actually wasting the natural resource that we could be to make a better America. That's where I look at it. Yes, it is a change, but me is a change where you let the healing process, let the natural processes that will make us really great. I think that liberty, justice, and the pursuit of happiness will make us great, but it's not going to make us great if you are oppressing people. Oppression does not make people great. Raping someone does not make a person great. Lying to them does not make the person great. Stealing from them, none of these things naturally go to make that person great. So what we're saying is, let's be real about this. Let's see how we can actually look at these things and not try to cover up a festering wound. Like we talked about, if you have a wound, you want to clean it out first before you put the band-aids on it. This is a festering wound that has been in America since its beginning. And it's time to say, okay, let's just start covering up the wound and letting it fester. Let's not stop letting corruption and sick laws keep governing us just to keep this sickness going, just so people who are bad businessmen and can't make a business work unless they're cheating someone. Why do we have to have a nation that a person in business has to cheat others to be able to make a living? That does not make sense. And so what we're saying about this change that we want to make sure we're going, because remember, you don't want it to change for the worse. You don't want a worse system. You want to say, how can we make this process a healing process? And if we get back to that natural things that were in here, because part of the lesson that we have, and in a minute I'll go to it, is talking about that stone which the builders refused. I believe in America that stone that the builders have refused in America is truth, justice, and the pursuit of happiness. They've taken that stone that could have been the foundation of a beautiful foundation for America, and they have put corruption in it. They have put exploitation in it. They have put genocide as part of that stone that was laid. And that stone that America was built on, that they are now rejecting, calling it their history, is what will really make this nation grow to something both great and beautiful. I want a great and beautiful America, not one that is great for some as long as you're making it ugly for others. Anyone else have such thoughts? I think Teresa is speaking again.
I like the lesson of the crab, and I like how how you told us like you got to go in and dig and within, but we need to go within ourselves and dig and find out, what's keeping us from our spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
The ladder, like you were saying, the Jacob's ladder, the ladder, to me, the ladder is always down. And angels are always going up and down the ladder. And to me, the angels are like the spiritual ideas that are coming from God. That's always coming down to mankind. And we need to open up and dig within ourselves so that we can see the ladder, so that we can see the angels, the ideas that are coming down from God that we need to latch on to, that'll help raise humanity.
That was Mother's big
That's
thing
how I
is how.
kind of see about the lesson of Jacob ladder. It's like we need to know that that ladder is always down. It's always a link. We always have a link
Mhm,
between us and God.
mhm.
The angels are symbols of that link, the ideas that God is sending down for us to latch on to help raise mankind.
Yes.
That's kind of the way
Yeah.
I see it.
Yes, and that's it's so true. That's what we believe. And remember, it says that angels were ascending and descending. So it's saying that a lot of times when we think about heaven, we think that it's an unreachable place. It can't get there. But from that Jacob's ladder, he saw angels ascending and descending it. So that means God can get messages down to you, and you can send messages back up to God. So or to heaven. We have a connection to those heavenly sources, but we would like to think, oh no, it's the ways of the world, the way they have things down here. And we keep trying to believe that somehow lying and stealing and covering it up, to cover up your crimes by saying, but look how great we are. Uh, you can be, that is not a real greatness. Is saying, look how, how much money I have stolen is not a way of saying how great we are. If you could have that money and you made it righteously, that when you can say you're both great and beautiful. And that's what we're saying. How do we make it where it's both great and beautiful to be able to see things in life? And have a little bit more, but still want. Does anyone else have any comments? So I want to finish up this lesson on the craft. So I'm going to um, mute all for a minute and just try to go through this last parts of this lesson. But remember with this lesson on the craft, remember that concept that when you start digging into these things and working with this spirit and idea that we have from this time of cancer, that is some uncomfortable things that are going to come up. Going to the way the lesson was written, it says, other creatures may look at the remains of the dead as a refuge, but the way of the crab is to carve out the value that remains even after it seems to rot. It is important to understand the urge of the crab. It seeks to sustain and preserve life, no matter how vile the circumstances. While its urge may be affection, the action of scratching into the past often is very upsetting to others. Instead of seeing how we can purify ourselves by digesting the value of our past experience, most of us are sickened by the mere thought of retrospection. We keep holding for a better future without using the past as a stepping stone or foundation to a better tomorrow. For most of us, the errors of the past leave a bad taste in the mouth, and maybe that's why the crab is such a good symbol for this purifying influence. Its food almost goes straight from hand to stomach. Its mouth is basically an opening that also helps push food directly into its stomach. The crab starts to process the morsels of dinner immediately. Taste is not an issue. And I'm going to stop there for a minute. because when sometimes when some of the things when you're researching something, you get up there, and when I found out that I mentioned earlier that a crab claws are almost like its teeth. It can be able to crack things up and break them up. And so once it's snatched the things and broke them up, it actually puts them in its mouth. But his mouth, there's no throat, there are no taste buds, there's no tongue of a crab. There's just the stomach. And so once it puts it in his mouth just takes the food and takes it right to the stomach. Why? Many times when we have bad things because of the taste, we will say, oh, we don't want to deal with that. We want to make it positive. Um, we don't want to look at, because when they're talking about making America great, what they want to do is they want to say, oh, look at the results. Look at how much money has been made. Look at where America is. And let's not go and try to question the bad actions of these people. Let's not try to question that. Just let's look how good it is. Now, what that is like a child whose father was a thief and a murderer, and he made all this money. And now you're going to say, oh, but I don't want to look at that. Look how good my life is now. That wasn't my problem. That was his problem. And sometimes that for that person to keep that kind of thing up, they have to be just as lecherous as the parents before them, rather than trying to make it better. And part of that, because they have to look and see that that was nasty, that was evil. Let's try to process it and make it better so it can be reprocessed into something that can be a benefit. Because when a crab is eating these things that are there that are rotten and things like that, they're actually making it so that it doesn't rot anymore. It actually gets processed in something that the ecosystem can use to keep life going on. But let me finish reading the rest of the lesson, and then we'll go back and give some time to talk. It's only a one more paragraph, but starting from the line, it says, taste is not an issue. The bitter and sour memories of the past are not to be savored, but processed into life-sustaining energy. The lessons of the past do not cleanse or purify the past. Rather, they provide the inspiration and sympathy we need to make a clean and pure future. As it is suggested in the passage of Psalm 118, the stone of truth that you refuse to recognize in the past may be the cornerstone for you to build a better future in life. And I'm gonna open up the mics again to see if there's anyone. See if there any comments about this concept of you don't go to the past to try to keep perpetuating the things of the past. You look at the past, and that's what I say. It's not when you look at the past. That's why it's not to be savored. It's not to I'm going to sit up there, and that's what when they're trying to say that, oh, these people are great. They're trying to make the things that they do look good, and the things that they did did not look good. They're trying to make these men who, and I'm not saying that they were not brave to stand up for their bad concepts, but they were bad concepts. They were concepts that were holding America back, holding society back, stopping the growth of all classes of people, and just limiting it to a few of the people. So we're saying that, and I'm saying that these processes that we have that hold parts of society back, actually, I mean, when you're holding people back, you are holding society back. You are blocking the ideas, the concepts. I think they just look at it as, oh, if we start opening things up, if we start doing things honestly and fairly, it's going to mean that we are going to have less. And I say that when you start doing it right and letting those natural, real foundations, those stones of truth come through, you'll find out that there is actually more growth, not less. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, and I think you're right, Father. This is why it's so important that I feel like I have to keep that personal relationship with God. And I ask Him to show me and give me the courage and the strength to endure the things that I can't change and be able to go past and look through the trials that comes with that wisdom, because that's the way they think. You know, here I'm a black man. I don't want to give him all that money because he don't deserve it or he don't know what to do with it. And I would want to do just like the other person would want to be able to help myself, help my family, help my brother man, and most of all be able to take it and move forward, to be able to put myself in a position to leave my grandkids and my other grandkids and my grandkids and their grandkids an inheritance that may be able to get them a rightful place in this great world, this great universe that God have mandated for us to have. But that, and I think once again it comes to every individual themselves that have to deep down inside and find out and be willing to make that advance and move forward and trust in God and trust in His word and trust in a higher source, a higher power, because these are things that we can't get to where we're trying to get without. And I don't care how you look at it or how you try to put it on there. That's what it's going to take. It's an individual thing to be to have that relationship with Him.
That's so true, that we have to have that relation, because to me, when you're seeking the truth, you are seeking God's principles and things. And you'll see that the universe will let you know when you're working with God's principles. I think even some of these things that we're calling pandemics and all that, it's because we messed up the way we dealt with the earth. Did they, when the Europeans came over to the United States, they brought a lot of diseases with them. And the Native Americans were not, or they could, like sometimes they be called the indigenous Americans or indigenous people, were not prepared to deal with all those sicknesses. So many of them died of smallpox and other things. And when you look at that, it meant that they were living more in harmony with their surroundings than the people were in Europe. And then the people in Europe introduced their sicknesses, their lies, their cheating, and their stealing to a people that were not prepared for that, because they were living in harmony with the universe around them. Why can't the whole planet be living in such a way that we're living in harmony with our ecosystems, so that we're not creating some of these diseases? And yes, when disease strikes, that we do find ways to heal ourselves. But would it be good if we could actually stop some of these diseases in the bud by making sure that our ecosystem was of such that it did not create those illnesses in the first place? Part of our seeking, we just want to have, the vaccine, but the vaccine is just saying, oh, you're preparing yourself for the sickness, and not saying that how do we get rid of some of the things that create these vaccines? I mean, they create these viruses. And when you look at some of the causes of the viruses, it's the way that we are treating the ecosystem, the way we're treating our forests, the way we're treating other animals, how we're encroaching on their land, how we're maintaining our cities. All of these things help to create some of the illnesses, and yet we don't say that part of our efforts to heal it is to start doing better at the way that we deal with the land.
That's
so I think
what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the Bible speaks of man,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing. We can't see, once we start overlooking the Bible, we are really in church. It speaks to the seats of man. I mean, look, they come in with all this cloning, and they doing this, they doing that. You can't follow President Trump. President Trump is the president. He probably got a vaccine ready in his pocket. You know what I'm saying? So he feel like he don't have to walk around with a mess, but you have to take time out and think, are you going to benefit from that? The the Bible speaks of doing everything in law and decency and order. You know, so we have to know too that listen, if you trying to tell me you won't trust in God, the most highest power, but you will trust in man, which the Bible telling you man will let you down. Man gonna come on national TV and tell you a lie. That's the problem. You got so many different men saying so many different things that people don't know who to believe and what to do. But it seems like it's easy for the majority of people not to pray, not to stand on God's word, not to have that wisdom and say, you know what, I'm going to wash my hand because that's the way my mama taught me. She said, keep yourself clean, wash your hands. I'm going to keep my mask on because I don't want to bring detrimental to nobody else. That's how my mama taught me when we was young. We had a cold or you sneeze, she said, put your hand over your mouth. And when you finish that, go in there and wash your hand. These are things that we already know, but for some reason, we done got away from them, and we looking for an excuse or somebody to blame, but we really don't have nobody to blame but ourselves, because when you know better, you do better, and nobody can force you to do better unless you want to really do better. You understand? So it's just that mentality. We got to get past that mentality first to know that, hey, what works for them don't work for me. I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I'm trying to make sure at the end of the day I do and I follow my beliefs. And that's going to and encourage me, and that's going to incapability me to go on and teach my granddaughter or my grandkid, because I'm trying to make sure that the fruits that God given me, I'm trying to make sure they flourish and they go on generations through generations through generations through generations, like he said in his word. And that's what I was speaking of earlier about foremothers and forefathers. They prayed, they hung in there. They had the old church songs, they had the old prayers. You know, today we don't want to give God no time. You know, we want to be rushed. We want to rush, and God said, "Don't be anxious for nothing." But this is the place that we have found ourselves in these predicaments, because we have got away from what always worked before our forefathers and foremothers. But we're getting back to it. We're getting back to it slowly but surely. But I will keep saying it's an individual thing. You know, you have to do what you have to do. You can't always look for other people to try to help you unless you're willing to help yourself.
Because we were mentioning about God's and God's laws. God said he wanted you to prosper and be in good health. And that's what we should see, that when we're looking for that truth, that's when you're prospering in good health. Because you mentioned about President Trump and masks, and now President Trump is saying, oh, I'll wear masks. But all before, everybody that came near him and President Trump was getting tested on a regular basis. He didn't have to wear a mask. If everybody that was around me was tested and I knew that they did not have the virus, I would not have to wear a mask. And so President Trump was doing the same thing. Everywhere he was going, everybody that was near him was being tested, and he was being tested to make sure that he was not getting near the virus. But now he's sending people out to these things, and people are coming back to him with the virus. And so now he's saying, and it's kind of funny that now he's saying, oh, you know something? I'll wear a mask. I think I look good in a mask. Because what he's saying now, that just having people tested, and he's going to send them out to all these dangerous places, that he may need to have a mask on, and he may need to have the people around him with masks on to make sure he doesn't get it. But to be able to say that, oh, I'm not going to wear a mask, but I'm going to have everybody around me tested, is hypocrisy. But he's been a hypocrite and a liar for so long, and we shouldn't be surprised that he would have something where he's getting everybody tested around him to make sure that he's not being exposed to the virus, but then getting other people to say, oh, you're going to be free. Don't tell them that they're going to make you put a mask on. That it's just hypocritical.
But even at that, watch what him say. I mean, don't watch what him say, watch what him do. Because he said that, but then he came out that next big rally, he didn't have on no mask. There is no picture or nobody that you hear that can say that Trump has put on a mask. Okay, he said that because the numbers of people that's got it, that's getting it, have gotten larger. But he did them rallies. He has not put a mask on for them rallies yet. Okay. So watch what mother say, watch what, don't
him
watch
do.
what him say, watch
Say,
what him do. Okay? Because he's a
big-
big liar.
but he's found that, that is what he's kind of made his fortunes in life, is lying and cheating and finding ways to escape the rules. And I would like to see America where, like I said, where it's great and beautiful, that we don't have to lie, we don't have to cheat, we don't have to steal to make great progress. Anyone else? But I'd like to thank everyone for joining us in our lesson today. I hope you've gotten as much out of it as I have. It's always wonderful when we get involved in these things and start to think about things and getting other people's point of view, and even the point of views of, because when you're teaching, a lot of times thoughts start coming to you, thoughts that that you really can't claim them from your own. The thoughts that just come to help us to understand and find ways to see through the problems in life. So I'm glad that you're with us today. I have to apologize. I was supposed to get last week's recording up, and I never got it up on the website. I will get last week's recording up, and when this recording I get back, I'll put this week's recording up also. You can see the recordings at our website, which is www.spiritualguidancetemple.org, and make sure you put the temple in there, not just spiritual guidance, the spiritualguidancetemple.org, and you can find the recordings there. Again, I'd like to say I'd like to honor the founding of the United States on the 4th of July, and I honor the rock that it was founded on, that rock of liberty, justice for all. And if we try to get back to that rock and dig in, go ahead and take the hit of being able to look at the past and see some of the ugly things that have happened in the past. And it said it makes you uncomfortable to look at some of the bad things, even in your past. But at times you have to say, I am going to just go ahead and deal with the uncomfortableness of it, so I can look for those stones of truth, those rocks that become the foundation. But it's not all that you don't build it on the stench. You don't build it on that. You have to process it and take it through that craft. And because the other part of the cancer lesson is that cancer time does work with you through your dreams, just like that dream that Jacob had of opening up the door. It is through your dreams, through your meditation, through your prayers, as Deacon Jackson is saying, that it opens up that gateway to heaven for us, that we can find the answer and solution to those problems. Trying to think, are there any announcements or anything that's coming up that we need to recognize in July?
You have everybody unmuted.
I think everybody's unmuted, except Zandra, who knows how to unmute herself.
Oh.
So like I said, thank you for being a part of us. I'm going to end the recording. I'd like to end the recording with our dismissal. And we'll stay on for a little bit if anybody still has some questions. But for the end of the recording, let me say, may the love of God illuminate your way. May the will of God direct you each day. May the truth of God all errors depart. And may the peace of God forever dwell in your heart. Amen, amen, amen.